You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Global Trade This Week. I'm Pete Mento, and with me is my good friend and co-host, Doug Draper. Doug, how's it going, buddy?
It's going great, Pete. Going great. Again, I love our conversations pre-show. People would just laugh, roll their eyes, which always makes this show and the prep work worth it. So, yeah, I'm rocking it, doing well out in Colorado this week. So,
on Howard Stern, they have the post-show and the pre-show. We could do like a Patreon thing where they can pay to listen to the beginnings. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
So you're out in Colorado. I think we wanted to take a minute to send out our good wishes and prayers and everything we can, and try to get folks to donate to the fire efforts that are going on in California. I know both of us have great friends, relations out on the West Coast, and man, we're pulling for them. It's just, it looks like something out of a horror movie, Doug.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good point. I was in Fresno last week, and obviously I think it was 10x in California as far as the coverage, and it's just it's a horrible situation. So absolutely, our listeners that are in California, we're thinking about you guys.
Yeah, we're thinking about you, and we hope everybody's pulling through. And when it's over with, there'll be some kind of support for you. These sorts of disasters are it's just awful. It's just absolutely awful, and I'm hoping that there'll be some kind of relief and support, and everybody pulls through on it. On a transportation side of things, I don't believe it's affected ports or anything yet, but I haven't been really following it, Doug. Just been worried about the people more than the cargo.
Correct. Yeah, you're exactly right. So, well, good. Hey, man, I got a topic. I want to get on it. It's interesting. It's not directly related to global trade. It's not directly related to supply chain, but it's relevant enough that I was listening to some podcasts on the way back from my flight over the weekend. And we've talked about this topic indirectly in the past. It's about nuclear power, right? And we've talked about, hey, if you can get over the perception of nuclear power and all the tragedies that have happened, which over the past, our lifetime, to be honest with you, right? It's not like things happen every other week or every other year. But nuclear power is starting to reemerge, right, as a topic. And I say emerge because you just don't go in and start a reactor over or build a nuclear plant in a year, right? So this is a long-term play. But Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Meta, that's like 60% of the big six that are out there talking about the power that AI is pulling and is required for us to talk to robots and, try to be productive, and all the technologies going out there, some of which are valid, some of which are not, is that power is just going to go through the roof and the consumption is going to be unbelievable. And so these companies are being very vocal about let's look at this and reinvest and talk about this type of technology. Constellation Energy is one that popped up, is that they are efforting to bring Unit 1 of 3 Mile Island back into service, and they're parlaying that into a 20-year agreement with Microsoft. So the target date for this is 2028, which is still a long ways out. But I think it's going to be a big topic. This is my investment advice to you and to our listeners. If you want to invest in something that's going to skyrocket the next couple of years, anybody that's providing nuclear or is in that realm is going to be a big hit. And you don't have to be the Constellation Energy doing it. Think about the picks and the axes that it took to mine gold. Those people made a lot of money as well. So services and things that are related to the nuclear energy industry. But it's not really related to our topics, Pete, but I'll tell you what, it is going to be a big deal. It's going to continue to make headlines. And I'll give kudos, to the Amazons, the Googles, the Metas of the world that are acknowledging that the technology and the things they're bringing to the world are going to require a heck of a lot of power. And at least they're trying a different approach to it. So I don't know. Have you heard about all this? And what's your take on the power consumption?
I was getting ready for a meeting with a big cloud computing company. And it's funny, I had a call with a friend of mine at the Department of Energy, and I didn't know this. So here's a fun thing to learn. The Department of Energy actually manages our supercomputers. They're part of that. And the reason is exactly what you said, Doug. They require so much energy to work. And the way it was put to me was I had a can of Diet Coke on the table while we were having our conversation. And he said, that can of Coke, imagine that represents all the cloud computing that we need right now. I said, okay. And he said, once artificial intelligence really starts to take off and it's used in things that we use in every day, whether that's, business purposes or personal purposes, I said, let me guess, it'll be the size of this room. He goes, no. The need for computing will be the size of this city block in DC.
Oh,
so the Coke can is what it is now. He said the size of the city block that we're currently in DC is what it would probably take. And he said, but don't just think about the cloud computing. It's the same exponential rate with energy, right? With infrastructure, as these types of things get bigger and bigger, and they're more and more adopted in everyday use in America, all that stuff's going to come along with it. And they specifically talked about power and our need to find ways to have, as we are as a society, moving away from fossil fuels as quickly as we can, we're going to have to find ways to get more and more energy during that transition. And nuclear power seems to be one of the ones that should be adopted. When I was younger and I was at the academy, if you graduated back in from one of the Merchant Marine Academies and you were in the Navy, if you were smart enough to get into the nuclear program, you got a $30,000 bonus for getting through it. And now I think it's six figures. I think you get like $100,000 if you can get through the nuclear program. It's coming back. There are nuclear powered ships that Russia and China both have. We're seeing its use more and more often. And I always used to remark that these nuclear plants on ships, like an aircraft carrier or submarine, they're being managed for the most part by folks with high school educations that are being trained and taught how to use them, taught how to repair them, taught how to manage them. The technology is incredible. And when properly managed, it's safe. And I do hope that as an industry, transportation-wise, we try to find ways to make that power more available. As we electrify everything, it's going to mean finding electricity in a more, a more omnipotent way. It's got to be everywhere all the time. And nuclear power seems to be one of the smartest ways to get there, Doug. I could not agree with you more.
Yeah, interesting.
I, however, do not give investment advice. So it was Doug that did that. It wasn't me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's my pathetic investment advice. But the pick and axes, that's how you make the good money, everybody, is not necessarily what's the cutting edge. It's the services and the things that go into supporting it. That's where the big bucks are.
Think about it, Doug, right? All that stuff has to move. And a lot of it's going to move via air freight in a really tight market already where capacity is hard to find. So it will have an impact on our business. I read an article today that it's probably going to be 3 or 4 years until we're back at capacity need. We're always going to be sort of at a deficit when it comes to air freight because folks are moving not just e-commerce, they're moving all these servers and things that are associated with all this data stuff. I was really sick this weekend. I caught something flying and I got to catch up on all my economists and all my reading because I was just sort of sitting down hoping not to die. And it's a reoccurring theme in economic literature right now, how we're going to come up with enough energy to manage this new economy that's going to be so dominated by the consumption of electricity. Yeah. So it is fascinating, Doug.
Yeah. All right. What's your first topic?
My first topic is one that's kind of hard to get your head around, right? So China, it turns out, has $1 trillion deficit with regards to trade. So that means that for all the importing that they're doing, they're exporting $1 trillion more. And that is, it's one of those numbers that's difficult for us to conceive as human beings. So I want to put it to you this way. All of global trade is only $33 trillion. And $1 trillion of that is the export output of China. And why that's good, right? It means that there's a lot of inexpensive labor that's employing a lot of people and putting things out for consumption around the world. Where it's bad is that it's clearly an economy that's far too dependent on exports and needs to start looking at domestic production. The United States, Germany, France, India, these are all countries that are not near as large when it comes to exports as China. And China intends to maintain that dominance with exports. With these tariffs that are coming into place, who knows what they'll be? I've got my opinions on where they're going to end up, and I've expressed them many times on this show. But China's export dominance is something that I think we all think is there. We all know is there. But when you look at it as a function of numbers, it's $33 trillion of international trade, and $1 trillion of that is coming out of China. It sort of puts into perspective just how powerful they are when it comes to negotiating trade and how important a cog they are in that total wheel. I think if anything, China's going to play that dominance for a little bit longer, and the United States is going to do whatever it can to try to siphon that off. Because with that dominance comes their ability to grow their infrastructure, both for manufacturing but also their military. So that's really why you're seeing more and more of a push towards trying to curb that dominance, to curb that growth.
Yeah. Yeah, the first thing that I think of that is that a trillion is just, it's hard to wrap your head around it, right? I mean, pre-COVID, you threw around the term B is in billions, and people were like, oh my God, that's an insane number. And now you can't talk about a meaningful, impactful organization and company out there that isn't in the B's, right? Billions, the number of billionaires and the companies and stuff. And so it's almost like we're taking it to the next level with the trillion. And then the other concept of the number is that in whole, 33. China represents one of that. It's unbelievable, right? I'm curious to see what's going to happen with the tariffs that are implemented and how that's going to impact, right? It's all export. The imbalance is on the export. All of a sudden, you put a roadblock in there related to imports, at least specific to the United States. Is that going to have a blip, right? I mean, the world is a big place, and the U.S. is a big player, but it's not the only player. And so it'll be interesting to see if any of the trade, any of the tariffs that potentially could come into play are going to potentially help, right? As crazy as that may sound. But yeah, that is an astronomically big number, and it's hard to comprehend.
Well, okay. Well, that leads us to Doug's favorite part of the show. He likes to say our favorite part of the show, but I don't think that's realistic. It might be his.
Yeah.
It's halftime, baby. It's the time of the show when we get to talk about whatever we want to talk about. And I've got a topic. Doug's got a topic. Who wants to go first?
I'll crank mine off real quick because yours seems to be a good one to end with. But so I was in the hotel last Monday and I was flipping around on some channels, and this thing called the TGL came up, and it's golf related. I don't know. There's plenty of golfers that listen to the show. Tomorrow's Golf League, TGL, and it was started by Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, I think is how you pronounce the last name. I'm not a huge golfer, but it's this league that they've created. There's 6 teams, right? And each team has, I think, 4 PGA players because it's sanctioned through the PGA Tour. So it's not this one-off thing. It's kind of all part of it. And they have matches that are held in an indoor stadium in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida.
Wow.
And the cool thing is that all the tees off is in like a virtual green screen, right? So if you can remember Golden Tee, when you're sitting around drinking beers with your buddies and everybody's playing Golden Tee, same concept, right? These holes that are just crazy out of nowhere. And then it lands, and then they turn the putting and the chipping into like this dynamic green that can change. So it's not always the same. They can raise and lower the floor to make it resemble what you're seeing on the screen. And there's a 40-second clock to keep the game moving forward. The game's like 2 hours long. Sometimes it's team competition, sometimes it's individuals. But the cool thing that I saw is that the people playing this, the players, are legitimate PGA pros, right? They are well-known names that Tiger and Rory were able to pull out. And I'll tell you what, man, it's kind of the next thing. I could see people getting into this. It's half video game, half automated, half real putting. I think it's going to be pretty cool. So I don't know. Have you heard of TGL?
I haven't until you brought it up in the text this morning. The simulation part of it's what gets to me, Doug. I know it's really popular with people. I'm not a golfer. I am desperately bad at golf, but I know that there are people who love to go to these simulators where you actually you tee off, you hit the ball, and then it simulates based on how you hit it where it would go and what would happen. And what I find fascinating here is you don't have to be outside. Weather doesn't affect this. You can have these sort of simulators everywhere. So guys like you and I can say, okay, given the same type of track these guys played, how would we have done? Poorly, I imagine, but it allows for folks to kind of be on a circuit, right? One company who's managing how people are doing, we'd all be able to play in the same kind of a league. You could have leagues all over the world with people virtually playing it. I think it's a great idea, Doug. I think it's a great idea, and I think that people that are super into golf are going to find it as a really cool social thing to do. Like when you go to Topgolf, you don't have to really know how to golf to do okay at Topgolf. Things just sort of happen. It's the same idea, and I think it's going to do very well financially.
Yeah, Yeah. And the last thing is that like the spectators, it's almost like they're in a Thunderdome pit,
Oh wow.
old gladiator. So the the uh, the audience is above and the game is below, and so it's got this cool feel. But I just stumbled across it and I'm like, what the heck is this? And just for all the things you just said, Pete, I think it's going to really succeed.
Yeah, no, we'll have to watch it. Like I'll actually watch it, to see what it looks like. So that's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
for sure. All right, brother, what you
My halftime is both national and regional, Doug. Dunkin' Donuts is having a hard time supplying some of its outlets in New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada, and to the point where there's no donuts in some places. So you pull up to a Dunkin' Donuts, and they're like, "Hey, what's your order? Give me your coffee order." And they say, "Well, we don't have any donuts." Which, okay, if you're not from New England, you're not going to understand this. But Dunkin' Donuts in New England is an important part of the fabric of the culture. And I know that sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but there's a place in Massachusetts I can take you to where there's literally a Dunkin' Donuts on four corners of one town. Because of the traffic pattern, it's hard to take a left or a right. So they've got one on all four corners. And let me tell you, bud, it's never not busy. We are raised at a young age to think when you think coffee, you think Dunkies. We all drink iced coffee 12 months out of the year. It could be 30 below. Guys are drinking iced coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. Doug, this is unfathomable for me to think that I would go into a Dunkin' Donuts and not be able to get a butternut donut, the best of all the donuts. I'll fight you for that. It's the best of all the donuts. And I'm praying to the gods that be that this doesn't affect my brothers and sisters in New England because it would probably cause mass hysteria if it were to happen. So, Doug, are you a coffee guy? I tend to make my own. I don't tend to go out. I'm cheap, so I tend to make my own coffee. And then, second of all, do you have a donut? So this is a three-parter. Are you a coffee guy? Do you have a donut? If you have a donut, who makes it? And number three, what's your go-to coffee place as a Colorado?
Wow, that's a lot. So number one, I'm absolutely a coffee guy. Love it. And kind of like you, I make my own. But there's certain coffees that. Here's the deal. Here in Steamboat, the Ace Hardware has this special blend, and they serve coffee all day long. So I'll
Wow.
go in there just because I want some coffee, mingle around a little bit, say hello to Ted in the corner in the paint department, and just roll out. So absolutely love coffee. I'm a big donut guy, and when I travel through Denver, Voodoo Donuts is kind of my go-to. And the Raspberry Romeo, which is basically a jelly-filled donut, that's my go-to. So Voodoo Donuts, Raspberry Romeo, coffee from Ace Hardware, and what was the other question?
Your coffee place.
Oh, I guess it'd be Ace Hardware in Steamboat Springs, Colorado.
Wow. I love it. I love it. What a dude thing. Like I go to the hardware store to get my coffee, right? That'd be
Yeah,
like something Ron Swanson would say on Parks and Rec.
yeah,
I'm a Dunkies guy, always been a Dunkies guy. I love Starbucks. I really do. Like if I were to say that to some of my friends back home, they'd be like, "What's your problem?" Like, it's really good coffee. So I
yeah.
do love Starbucks, and my donut is the butternut donut. It's a cake donut that is got these little crunchies on the outside, and it's honey dip. It's very very good.
Mm,
But for the most part, I make my own coffee. When I have coffee, I like to drink cold brew. So I make my own cold brew, and I'm a big fan, man. Really big
yeah,
fan.
good. Well, I'm glad. There we go. Coffee, love it.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, brings us to our next topic, Doug. What do you got, pal?
all right. Well, this is global trade related, and it's related to some of the Mexican imports, right? And this topic could be three or four topics that we would break out. It could even be an entire show if it gets to that, right? Because number one, Mexico implemented some new import tariffs into Mexico for textiles
Mhm.
and finished apparel products, right? I didn't realize this, Pete, but that's gone into effect, right? When I did a little research on this, December 20th of 24, it went into effect, right? It's 35% for finished goods and 15% for textiles and the raw materials, if you will. And they're trying to, manage unfair competition and all the other reasons why you implement tariffs. And they're set to remain in effect until 2026, right? Like April, mid-year. And I started thinking, all right, well, think of all of the warehouses and all big companies, small companies that have set up operations for 3PLs in Mexico, specifically to de minimis and the fast fashion industry that has really exploded in the last couple of years, right? So the whole point is let's get into Mexico cheap. Let's ship it to customers in the United States at no cost for tariffs, and it's a clean play. There's no barriers. So now there's a 35% barrier for apparel, and then Pete, if the de minimis changes, that's a whole nother level. So this is going to be an interesting topic that I had heard about, didn't know a whole lot of detail on until I did a little research today. But what is happening from my folks is that commercial real estate in the LA market is starting to get some traction. I think we're going to see some trends in there where everybody's like, I need a plan B, which you and I have talked about many, many times in all of our topics. You got to have a plan B. It's like, holy crap, what if, what now? Get a plan B. Don't be stuck holding the bag. And so I think you're going to see some pivoting back to the U.S. with good old-fashioned e-commerce 3PL solutions, and the price of real estate in the LA basin for commercial is going to be going up, at least trending in that direction for this year.
Yeah, I didn't want to get it wrong, so I looked at some notes from my friend Mauricio, who I work with here at DSV. Sharp kid, really sharp kid. This is it's a two-parter, Doug. So one, it's trying to protect the textile industry in Mexico, which is pretty significant because, as you said, what's happening is they're coming to these bonded facilities and then just going straight to the U.S. And it's unfair competition to the Mexican textile firms that are trying to keep up. The second part of this really has to do with fighting the United States' current tariffs that we're talking about putting into play against Mexican imports. The fact remains that most of the use of these bonded facilities was being done outside the purpose of the law. The purpose of the law in these bonded facilities was never to just act as a pass-through. You're supposed to be manufacturing in it, and people aren't. And Mexico has seen this as a way to both help protect local industry and also kind of get their arms around the regulations again. And in the end, it's going to help the United States, who's trying so hard to control the de minimis coming into the U.S. We're talking about 4 million packages a day, dude. And I imagine that a significant portion of them are textiles. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a topic we're going to be talking a lot about in 2025, pal.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, my friend, bring us home. Your topic number 2.
Yeah, so for me, guys, I've said this many times. I love India. I've probably done over 100 trips to India in my career. I've got a lot of friends there. Big fan of India, and also a big believer in their place in the global economy and the growth that's going to come from that. An important number was popped a few days ago, where the rupee is trading at about 86 rupee to the dollar. And anytime you're under 90, the world begins to take notice because the rupee is losing its stability. It's becoming less and less valuable against foreign currencies. Great when you're an exporter. I mean, fantastic when you're an exporter. But when you're an importer, it's a real problem. And seeing as how they import so much energy and they import so many contributing factors to manufacturing, it's going to be an issue probably for the full year. So part of me wonders if this was a good thing that's being done to try to push more people to India to manufacture instead of China. But at the same time, it shows from negative headwinds for the Indian economy, which right now is not in a position to really want to have to deal with that. So it's important, Doug. We don't talk enough about currency and about how currency, we probably do, but we don't, as people in the industry, talk about how the strength of a currency really determines the strength of exports and imports for a country. This is bad news for India's need to consume foreign energy, but it's good news in their ability to export. I'll be watching that pretty closely. So for those of you involved in trade in India, keep in mind that rupee continues to lose value, and there's no indication that it's slowing down. It could go down even further.
Well, we've talked about on this show about how India is kind of coming to their own in the global stage, right? And there's a lot of credence and credibility to that. The one thing that needs to be improved upon is infrastructure.
Yeah.
And you need energy to build. You need energy to move. And as the economy keeps developing and emerging and becoming a world player, which will happen and is starting to happen, it's funny. It's like they've stepped into the realm of the big boys, right? If you want to be a global powerhouse and really step into the playing field. Oh, by the way, currency can have an impact and the ebbs and flows of that. And I think this is the first kind of real situation where, hey, we're here. We're now an emerging player in the global economy. oh my God, I didn't realize how impactful this journey can be related to currency exchange rates and stuff. So you're right. I mean, they're going to be consuming a hell of a lot to build their infrastructure. And like you said, oil and natural resources is a big part of that. So I'm not as well versed on the Indian economy. I was surprised when you said you'd been over there, over 100 times. So you, by far and away, more versed than ours. But I don't know, from talking to your friends, are they like, holy shit, this is really bad? Or they're like, you know what, this is just part of it and we're prepared to navigate?
And people are concerned, bud. They're concerned because when you import so much of that energy, that goes into production and increases production costs. And it makes it a little bit harder to be as competitive as you want to be with the rest of the world. So thoughts and prayers, baby. Thoughts and prayers. Hope they can pull something out of this.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's edition of Global Trade This Week. We've covered a lot of topics, and I wouldn't be able to do it without you, Pete, and we wouldn't be able to do this without Cap Logistics, who put this thing together for us every week. I've said this wrong once, but Keenan pulls the levers and pushes the buttons. I said that wrong one time, but if Cap wasn't here, we wouldn't be here. And I made a comment on a post the other day. I said, we just renewed our contract with Cap. That was kind of tongue in cheek because we get paid $0.00 to do this show. So I don't know if there's really a contract in place for that. But anyway, I just want to thank Cap for all their support. And I want to thank you, Pete, for being here with me. And I can't wait for a great 2025 on the show.
Likewise, buddy. Thanks to Cap Logistics. And looking forward to another great year of just talking our crap every week, bud.
Love it. What a great platform, Pete. That's what everybody wants.
What a great platform, yeah.
All right. Good deal. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you later.
See you.